Uh, Good morning. Today we are going to complete our discussion of William Jacobs' short story entitled The Monk's Poem. On page number 27, let's go by reading the first paragraph on this page. They sat down by the fire again while the two men finished their pipes. Of course, Mr. White and Sergeant Major Morris. Outside, outside of the house, the wind was higher than ever. Uh, the speech about the wind getting higher or tougher is a glimpse or is a symbol of the intensive actions going on, of the rising action of the plot. And the old man started nervously at the sound of a door banging upstairs. A silence unusual and depressing settled upon all three, which lasted until the old couple rose to retire for the night. I expect you'll find the cash tied up in a big bag in the middle of your bed, said Herbert. Of course, he is mocking his father, as he bade them good night, and something horrible squatting up on top of the wardrobe. The wardrobe is the closet, خزانة الملابس, watching you as you pocket. Here, this word pocket is a verb to put. It means put in your pocket. As you pocket your ill-gotten gains. Does Mr. Herbert have ill-gotten gains? Of course. The word or this adjective means, ill-gotten. It means acquired illegally. Acquired illegally. So he is mocking his father and saying that someday or sometime you'll find cash coming up from the sky or descending from the sky while you are in bed. In the brightness of the wintry sun next morning, as it streamed over the breakfast table, Herbert laughed at his fears. So this is next day morning, and they are having their breakfast. There was an air of prosaic wholesomeness. The word, this adjective prosaic, means common or sometimes boring. We'll see which is best. So wholesomeness, it means wisdom about the room, which it had lacked on the previous night because it was so magical, so fantastical, so fanciful, so imaginative, unbelievable. And the dirty, shriveled. Look at how he describes the poet. Dirty, shriveled, it means dried up, dried يعني جاف تمام. Little Poe was pitched on the sideboard with the carelessness which betokened no great belief in its virtue. Again, so the Poe was pitched on, it means was thrown ملقى على the sideboard with carelessness. You know, the sideboard is a piece of furniture in which you keep the tableware. يعني اللي بنسميه عندنا النيش أو مكان حفظ أدوات السفرة. So with the carelessness which betoken no great belief. So this kind of carelessness, the poet which is thrown on the sideboard Okay, it's a symbol of their, or it stands for their carelessness. They don't believe in it or in its ability to bring fortune to them because it was futile last night. So this be talking, no great. It be talking means foretold, okay, or symbolize no great belief in its virtues, in the virtues of the Poe. It means in the goodness or the utility or the good quality of the Poe. I suppose all soldiers are the same, said Mrs. White. The idea of our listening to such nonsense. So she describes this story of Mr. Major or Sergeant Major Morris as being nonsense. كلام فارغ. How could wishes be granted in these days? And if they could, how could 200 pounds hurt you, father? Might drop on his head from the sky, said the frivolous Herbert. Frivolous means the silly Herbert or the foolish Herbert. Again, he is mocking, okay, he's making fun of his father. Morris said the things happened, and pay attention to this. This is very important, okay? It doesn't come all of a sudden or illogically, but things happen so naturally, said his father, that you might, if you so wished, attribute it to coincidence. So the wish might happen, and when it does, it happens quite naturally. You can give a rationalization or a logical rationalization, justification of its occurrence. Well, don't break into the money before I come back, again mocking his father, said Herbert as he rose from the table. So he's going to work. And by the way, the son Herbert, this boy, this young man, works at a factory, said Herbert as he rose from the table. I'm afraid it'll turn you into a mean, avaricious man, a greedy man, and we shall have to disown you. To disown someone is to cut someone from inheritance. His mother laughed, something funny of course, and following him to the door watched him down the road, and returning to the breakfast table was very happy at the expense of her husband's credulity, of her husband's naivety or gullibility, says Eghazuga. All of which didn't prevent her from scurrying to the door at the postman's knock. To scurry to a place is to move quickly to it. So there was a postman at the door. Nor prevent her from referring somewhat shortly to retired Sergeant Major Morris, of course, of bibulous habits, of drinking habits, when she found that the post brought a tailor's bill. So this postman brought a tailor's bill. So they are in debt to tailors. Herbert will have some more of his funny remarks, I expect, when he comes home, she said, as they sat at dinner. I dare say. This verb means I dare to say, said Mrs. White, pouring himself out of some beer. But for all that, the thing moved in my hand. He asserts on the fact that this thing, this Poe, this cursed Poe, the talisman, moved in his hand. He still believed in that. That happened. That I swear to it. You thought it dead, said the old lady soothingly, calmingly, to make him calmer. I see it dead, replied the other. There was no thought about it, no doubt. I had just... What is the matter? His wife made no reply. She was... Listen carefully. She was watching the mysterious movements of a man outside. يعني هم في خضم تلك محادثة عن ما إذا كان ذلك الشيء تحرك أم لا. زوجها توقف عن الكلام ولاحظ أنها تنظر باهتمام لأحدهم خارج المنزل رايح جاي. Okay. She was watching the mysterious movements outside of a man outside who, peering in an undecided fashion, this expression, this phrase, undecided fashion, it means a hesitant matter. Okay, in a hesitant way, بشكل فيه تردد. He wants to get and to knock at the door, but he doesn't do that at the house. Appeared to be trying to make up his mind to enter or not. In mental connection with the 200 pounds, she thinks that this might have a relationship to the sum of money they are expecting to come all of a sudden. In mental connection with the 200 pounds, she noted that the stranger was well dressed and wore a silk hat of a glossy newness, of shiny, it was very, very shiny and new, his hat. And so he is a rich man. 3 times he paused at the gate outside and then walked on again. The 4th time he stood with his hand upon it and then with sudden resolution flung it open. He threw the gate open. He opened the gate and walked up the path. Mrs. White at the same moment placed her hands behind her and hurriedly unfastening the strings of her apron. You know, the apron of a woman is her protective cloth. Protective cloth. This cloth or this wear, okay, which she puts on while doing the housework. بنسميها مريالة المطبخ أو البيت. Put that useful article of apparel of the clothing or the garment beneath the cushion of her chair, beneath the pillow of her chair to cover it. Or she brought the stranger. He comes in, who seemed ill at ease. It means that he seemed uneasy. He seemed uncomfortable. Something wrong with him. Into the room. She let him in. He gazed furtively at Mrs. White. Furtively means stealthily or shyly. And listened in a preoccupied fashion, it means in a busy manner, as the old lady apologized for the appearance of the room. And her husband's coat, a garment which he usually reserved for the garden. So they are very poor and she wants to hide that, or she wants to make excuses for that, for this rich man. She then waited so patiently, or as patiently as her sex would permit, for him to broach his business. This word sex here means her gender as a female. Because as you know, there were certain restrictions women at that time would permit for him to broach his business. It means to open discussion of, to proceed forward with his discussion, to open the matter. But he was at first strangely silent. At first he was silent. Then he begins to say, by the way, I want to have your attention to the fact that when you relate the events of a story, a novel, a short story, or a play, any work, when you narrate the events, عندما تروي أحداث القصة, you must use the present simple form. Because a literary work, whether a story, a short story, a novel, or whatever, is a living creature. It didn't die. It is still alive. And so when you describe that, you should use, when you relate the events, you should use the present simple tense, because a literary work is written for every time and everywhere. It is suitable for every time and everywhere. Unless the context urges you, or you find that it is necessary to use the past simple tense in the middle of your relating of this story using the present simple, so it's okay, and as limited as possible. Okay, he begins to say, I, then two hyphens or two. It means that he is very hesitant. I was asked to call, he said at last, and stooped. He bent, stooped, and picked a piece of cotton from his trousers. So he comes from a cotton mill or a cotton factory. هو بيعمل في مصنع قطن. ده رمز لأن هو أو إشارة إلى أنه هو بيعمل في مصنع قطن. I come from Moe and Miggins. The name of this mill or factory is Moe and Miggins. اسم المصنع Moe and Miggins. The old lady started. Is anything the matter? This place, this factory, is where her son works. She asked breathlessly, speedily. Is anything the matter? Just like that. Has anything happened to Herbert? What is it? What is it? Her husband interposed. Her husband interfered at this moment. There, mother. Wait, he said hastily. Sit down and don't jump to conclusions. You've not brought bad news, I'm sure, sir. And he eyed the other wistfully. To eye someone wistfully, to look at him yearningly or lovingly. I'm sorry, began the visitor. Is he hurt? Demanded the mother, asked with insistence. Is he hurt? The visitor bowed in assent. Just like that. He did just like that. يعني أماء بجسده دلالة على قبوله ما ذهبت إليه، يعني دلالة على أن ذلك صحيح. Badly hurt. He was badly hurt. He said quietly, but he's not in any pain. Oh my God. Does it mean that he became alright? Or does it mean that he passed away, he died? Oh, thank God, said the old woman, clasping her hands, just like, oh, thank God. Thank God for that, and she didn't complete that. Something came to her mind, an idea, a new idea, different idea. She broke off suddenly. She stopped, thanking God. She stopped at the sinister meaning of the assurance. The word sinister, it means the wicked or the evil. Okay, the malicious meaning of the assurance. This word, he's not in pain anymore, might mean or might have a different negative meaning. Okay, meaning of the assurance dawned upon her. She began to understand the meaning of his saying he's not in pain anymore. And she saw the awful confirmation of her fears in the other's averted face. He turned away his face. To avert someone's face is to turn it away. She saw that as a sign of his approval of the fact that something bad happened to the young man and he is not in pain anymore. She caught her breath and turning to her slower-witted husband, to her stupid husband, means laid her trembling old hand upon his. Okay, there was a long silence. They are shocked. They don't believe what they hear. They lost their son, the only son. He was caught in the machinery. So the cause of their son's death is that he was caught in the machinery. The machines caused his own death. It was an accident at the factory, said the visitor at length at the end, in a low voice. Just like that, he was caught in the machinery. He sat, sorry, caught in the machinery, repeated Mr. White, in a dazed fashion. Yes. He sat staring blankly out of the window. The son went to the window and started staring blankly. To stare blankly, to look at something without any expressions, without displaying any expression or showing any expressions on the face. And taking his wife's hand between his own, pressed it as he had been wanted to do, as he used to do in their old courting days, nearly when they were young, nearly 40 years before. He was the only one left to us, he said, turning gently to the visitor. It's hard. The other coughed, and rising, walked slowly to the window. The firm, he begins to say, the firm wished me to convey their sincere sympathy with you in your great loss, he said, without looking around. I beg that you will understand I am only their servant and merely obeying orders. So this man is the representative of the factory, Moe and Miggins, coming to announce the sad news of Herbert's death. That's all. There was no reply. The old woman's face was white, shahib, her eyes staring. She can't believe that. Her eyes staring, and her breath inaudible. Her breath can't be heard. Okay? On the husband's face was a look such as his friend the sergeant might have carried into his first action when he came last night. I was to say that, and this is the very fact that he came in for. In fact, he didn't came only to express his condolences, the sad news, but most importantly, he came in to claim that. Let's read together. I was to say that Moe and Miggins, the factory, disclaim any all responsibility. So the factory owners, okay, disclaim, they renounce all responsibility. ينكروا أي مسؤولية، يعني يخلوا مسؤوليتهم عن الحادث. They admit no liability at all, no responsibility. We are not responsible for what had happened. But in consideration of your son's services, they wish to present you with a certain sum as compensation. أتى من أجل إعطائهم تعويض. What do you think this compensation might be? How much? I know you are answering me now, or some of you. The compensation might be the £200 they asked for or they wished for last night. Could it be? Let's go on. Mr. Wyatt dropped his wife's hand, arising to his feet, gazed with a look of horror at his visitor. His dry lips shaped the words, He said it so hardly. How much? How much? 200 pounds was the answer. Oh my God. Unconscious of his wife's shriek, the man, the father, was unconscious. كان لا يدري بما حدث في تلك اللحظات. Of his wife's shriek, of his wife's scream. She began screaming when she heard that. The old man smiled faintly. He smiled faintly. He smiled feebly or weakly. ابتسم ابتسامة خفيفة. ابتسامة صدمة. Put out his hands like a sightless man, just like that. تحسس طريقه. And he dropped to the ground as a senseless heap. A senseless heap, like it means like a dead pile of something. يعني ككومة وقع على الأرض، ككومة من أي شيء، كومة من الخشب أو كومة من المجموعة من الخشب الألواح to the floor. So she began screaming and he dropped to the ground in response to the bad news of their son's death and their probable responsibility of what had befallen the son, what had caused the son's death. So they wished for 200 pounds and it came all naturally, not magically, but all naturally, because of his being compensated by the factory for this sudden death. And the huge new cemetery, some 2 miles distant away, the old people buried their dead, the son, and came back to a house steeped in shadow. Steeped in something is full of something, in shadow, in blackness and silence. It was all over so quickly that at first they could hardly realize it. They didn't believe just what had happened and remained in a state of expectation, as though of something else to happen. Something else which was to lighten this load, to lighten this or relieve this burden, too heavy for all hearts, to all people, hearts to bear. But the days passed, and expectation gave place to resignation. And the word resignation here means submission to fate. يعني رضوا بقضائهم، رضوا بقدرهم. The hopeless resignation of the old, sometimes miscalled apathy, or it means indifference. Sometimes they hardly exchanged a word. They spoke not, for now they had nothing to talk about, and their days belonged to weariness, to fatigue, to exhaustion. They are so tired. It was about a week after that the old man, walking suddenly in the night, stretched out his hand and found himself alone. The room was in darkness, and the sound of subdued weeping came from the window. Subdued weeping, it means submissive weeping, overcome weeping, coming from the window. He raised himself in bed and listened. Come back, he said tenderly or gently. You will be cold. So the mother is weeping at the window, and he is calling her back. It is colder for my son out there in the cemetery, said the old woman, and wept afresh. And wept afresh, it means, and wept all over again, weeping and weeping and weeping, alone. The sound of her sobs, the sound of her weeps, died away on his ears. The bed was warm, and his eyes heavy with sleep. He dozed fitfully. It means he napped irregularly. He slept now and then slept until a sudden cry from his wife awoke him with a start. Why? The monk spoke, she said. She woke him up with these. The monk spoke with this expression. She cried wildly. The monk spoke again. The monk spoke. He started up in alarm. He got up suddenly. Where? Where is it? Where is it? What is the matter? She came stumbling across the room toward him. To stumble is to, to stagger. To stumble is to stagger. يعني يترنح. جاي here تترنح. I want it. I want the monk's spell. She said quietly, you've not destroyed it? Did you destroy that? It's in the parlor. It's in the sitting room. On the bracket. On the shelf. He replied, marveling. Marveling. It means wondering. Exclaiming, why? She cried and laughed together at the same time. Cry and laugh. It's a kind of hysterical state of mind. To laugh and cry at the same time. And bending over, kissed his cheek. I only just thought of it, she said hysterically. Why didn't I think of it before? Why didn't you think of it? You might ask, what are this couple talking about? What they think or what they should think about, and for what? Think of what? He questioned. The other two wishes, she replied rapidly. Oh, so she thinks of using the other remaining two wishes. We've only had one, and so two remains. Was not that enough? He demanded fiercely. He replied to her fiercely. Was that not enough? What happened to us, the death of our son, of our beloved one? It was enough, quite enough. No, she cried triumphantly. We'll have one more wish. Go down and get it quickly, and wish our boy alive again. The man sat up in bed and flung the bedclothes from his quaking limbs, from his trembling limbs. Good God, Ya Ilahi, you are mad. How could you think of that, of reusing the pearl once more? How could you think of believing once more in the magical powers of this pearl, which proved to be quite true? You are mad, he cried, aghast. It means shocked, horrified. Get it, she panted. She yearned, she asked him, get it quickly, and wish. Oh, my boy, my boy. She is in kind of hysterical state of mind, as I said. Her husband struck a match, ولع كبريت, and lit the candle, أضاء الشمعة. Get back to bed, he said unsteadily, shakily. You don't know what you are saying. We have the first wish granted, said the old woman feverishly. It means excitedly. Why not the second? Look at his reply. It is just a coincidence. It is something natural, not magical. Just a coincidence of life, stammered the old man. It means stopping while talking, while speaking. Okay? Coincidence. He interrupted her speech by saying, it's a coincidence. Go and get it and wish, cried the old woman, and dragged him toward, she even dragged him, Garrito, toward the door. He went down in the darkness and felt his way. He felt his way, تحسس طريقه في الظلام, to the parlor, and then to the mantelpiece. The mantelpiece is the decorative structure around the fireplace. The mantelpiece is the decorated structure around the fireplace. جزء كده مزخرف, هيكل مزخرف, جزء مزخرف, إطار مزخرف حول المدفأة. The talisman of course, the talisman, the cursed object, was in its place as it is, and its horrible fear that the unspoken wish might bring his mutilated son before him ere he could escape from the room seized upon him. Oh, so to his mind came a horrible horrible idea, that the unspoken wish, the unexpressed wish, the unused wish, might bring his mutilated son. The word mutilate, it means maimed, disfigured. How could you think of a man being buried for about a week now? If he was resurrected, okay, if life came to him once more, how could you think of his body after 7 days of being buried at the cemetery? Of course, a decomposed figure, يعني جسد متحلل. The process of decomposition, عملية التحلل of the body. Mutilated, مشوه. Ere he could escape. Ere means, it's an old expression, it's an old word. It means before he could escape from the room seized upon him. This idea seized his mind, and he caught his breath as he found that he had lost the direction of the door. His brow cooled with the sweat. عرق. He felt his way around the table and grubbed along to find his way. Of course, to find his way by using the hand, and grubbed along the wall. عارفين يعني بيتحسس الحائط حتى يجد أو يصل إلى مراده, until he found himself in the small passage with the unwholesome thing in his hand, with the harmful thing in his hand, the Poe. Even his wife's face seemed changed as he entered the room. It was wide and expectant. She was waiting, and to his fears seemed to have an unnatural look upon it. He was afraid of her. "Wish!" she cried. "Wish!" in a strong voice. "Wish!" "It is foolish and wicked. Foolish. It is nonsensical and wicked." شرير. He faltered. He hesitated. He told her like this: "It is foolish and wicked." "Wish!" repeated the wife. He raised his hand, his right hand, remember? His right hand. "I wish my son alive again." So he uses the Poe a second time. The talisman, the object fell to the floor because it moved, of course, and he regarded it shudderingly or tremblingly, or بيقشعر جسده, بيهتز. Then he sank trembling into a chair. He sat down, as the old woman, just like his wife, with burning eyes, with agitated eyes, waiting for something to happen, walked to the window and raised the blind. To raise the blind here means the shade or the curtain. He sat until he was chilled with the cold, until he was made very cold, okay? With the cold, glancing occasionally at the figure of the old woman, peering through the window, looking through the window. The candle end, which had burned below the rim of the china, below the edge of the china. The china, of course, the china, the tableware. The china is the table اللي احنا بنسميه عندنا الطقم الصيني يعني. Candlestick. The candlestick is the candle bearer or holder. ممسك الشمعة أو ماسك الشمعة. While throwing pulsating shadows. The candle was throwing pulsating shadows, يعني beating shadows. ظلال الشمعة التي تحدثها الشمعة كانت تذهب مجيئا وذهابا on the ceiling on the overhead wall and walls until, with a flicker larger, with a light or a sparkle which is larger than the rest, it expired, it ended. The old man, with an unspeakable sense of relief, with an inexpressible sense of relief at the failure of the talisman, so he becomes happy that nothing happened. His fears didn't come true. Crept back to his bed, so he went to bed. And a minute or two afterward, the old woman came silently and apathetically beside him, indifferently went beside him. Neither spoke, but both lay silently listening to the ticking of the clock. A stair creaked. To creak is to make a noise. So there was a creak or a loud noise made by one of the stairs. But how or why? And a squeaky mouse. A mouse that makes loud sounds. A mouse that makes loud sounds. Scurried noisily. Ran quickly. Moved quickly through the wall. The darkness was oppressive. The darkness was everywhere, oppressive. And after lying for some time, screwing up his carriage, summoning up his carriage, يعني يستجمع شجاعته. The husband took the box of matches again and, striking one, went downstairs for a candle, to search for a candle to light it up. At the foot of the stairs, down the stairs, the match went out. انطفأ عود الثقاب. And he paused to strike another, and at the same moment a knock. He heard a knock. So quiet and stealthy, so secretive, as to be scarcely audible. He heard that very, very hardly. He couldn't hear that. Sounded on the front door. The matches fell from his hand. He stood motionless, shocked. His breath suspended until the knock was repeated. Again. Another knock. Then he turned and fled swiftly back to his room. He ran upstairs again, very, very fearful, afraid, and closed the door behind him. A third knock sounded through the house. It became louder and louder. "What is that?" cried the old woman upstairs, starting up, getting up from her chair or from her bed. "A rat," said the old man. "It might be a rat," in shaking tones. "A rat. It passed me on the stairs." His wife sat up in bed listening. A loud knock resounded, resonated, echoed. It filled the house, the entire house, through the house. And so she screamed, "It's Herbert! The wish is granted," she thinks. "The wish is finally granted. My son has come back. It's Herbert." She ran to the door, but her husband was before her, and catching her by the arm, held her tightly. مسكها جامد. "What are you going to do?" he whispered. "What are you going to do?" he whispered harshly. He whispered and harshly. "What are you going to do?" Just like that. "It's my boy. It's Herbert," she cried. She doesn't fear what might be lying behind the door. She cried, struggling mechanically. Look at this expression, very impressive. Struggling against her husband mechanically. The word mechanically means without thinking. Mechanically, without thinking. She just wants her son back, and she doesn't think of the consequences of this. "I forgot it was 2 miles away. What are you holding me for? Let go of me. I must open the door. For God's sake, don't let it in. And look at that. He uses the pronoun it instead of him to express that whatever lies behind the door is no more their son as he used to be. It's it might be corpse, his corpse coming back. And in case it does, it is no more in its original shape or form. It is a decayed corpse, a decayed body. Another explanation that this pronoun might mean is that their son's ghost is outside. Okay? So the pronoun here refers to either the decayed corpse of the son or its ghost. Cried the old man, trembling. You're afraid of your own son, she cried, struggling. Let me go. I'm coming, Herbert, I'm coming to you. There was another knock. And another. Many knocks. The old woman was a sudden wrench, with a sudden violent twist. Okay? A sudden wrench, it means a sudden violent twist. يعني أفلتت منه بقسوة. Broke free. Ran from the room. Her husband followed her to the landing. You know, the landing is the platform between the floors of the stairs. Okay, the platform between the stairs. And called after her appealingly, yani pleadingly. He called after her as she heard downstairs. He heard the chain rattle back and the bottom bolt drawn slowly. Wait. He heard the chain, the chain of the door, rattle back, make fast sounds. Rattle back to make fast sounds. And the bottom bolt, the bolt is the latch, or what we call in Arabic الترباس الباب. Okay, أو المزلاق ممكن باللغة العربية الفصحى. Drawn slowly and stiffly, rigidly from its cavity. يفتح الترباس من الحجرة بتاعته يعني. من الفتحة بتاعته. Then the old woman's voice, strained and panting. Strained, it means tired, weak, and angry. And panting. Panting with rapid, successive breaths. يعني ضربات قلب متسرعة ومتعاقبة. The bolt, she cried loudly. The bolt, يعني مش الترباس مش قادرة افتحه. Come down, I can't reach it. مش قادرة اوصل للترباس. But her husband was on his hands and knees, groping wildly. Again, grab to feel with his hands. On the floor in search of what? He's searching for the pole. He's upstairs. He didn't come downstairs. He was in search for the pole. But why? If he could only find it before the thing, okay, outside got in. A perfect facility of knocks. A facility of knocks, it means many successive rapid sequence of something. Many successive rapid of knocks reverberated, echoed, more and more knocks on the door through the house, and he heard the scraping of a chair as his wife put it down. The scraping of a chair, it means the act of scratching. When you drag a chair on the floor and this chair is very heavy, it produces a sound of scraping. Okay? A sound that is produced when you drag a chair on the floor. Or when you drag two surfaces against each other. So the scraping of a chair as his wife put it down in the passage against the door. She wants to use the chair to reach the bolt up the door. He heard the creaking of the bolt, the harsh noise of moving the bolt. So she managed to reach the bolt up, okay, as it came slowly back. And at the same moment, he found the monk's bow, and frantically, hysterically breathed his third and last wish. Of course, breathed, it means he uttered. تلفظ به, breathed, or uttered. تلفظ به, okay, his last wish. So he uses the last wish they have. But what for? What for? You're going to know. The knocking ceased suddenly. The knocking stopped. Although the echoes of it were still in the house, the echoes of the knocking. He heard the chair drawn back and the door opened. Of course, the wife did that. Finally, she managed to open the door. A cold wind rushed up the staircase, just like that. And a long, loud wail of disappointment. A wail is a lament or a cry. And misery from his wife gave him courage to run down to her side. So he came down when he heard her wailing or crying. Why does she cry? Because, of course, of her disappointment. No one is outside. Her son is there no more. The poe is now fruitful for the third time. The father managed to keep away whatever might have been knocking at the door away, whether the ghost or the decayed corpse. He succeeded in removing that thing outside the house. And then to the gate beyond. The street lamp outside and the street flickering, flashing, opposite, shone on a quiet, shone on, yani it cast its light on quiet and deserted and empty, deserted road. So the street is empty, and so are their wishes. Thank you, dear student. You will find a full analysis of the plot of the Monk's Paw and its major themes following this short story in your books. Thank you, and stay tuned for other lectures.